Hey everyone, it's Allen over at Cobblers Plus. In today's video, I'm going to be working on these Allen Edmonds Maritimes. I've got two pairs of them, different sizes from two different customers, but I thought I'd throw them together because they're red and green and white, kind of Christmassy colors. So I think it'd be perfect time to post that video for Christmas holiday season. So come join us and check it out and see how the Resole process goes on this style of shoe. Alright everyone, so these are kind of a simple thing, and what we're using here, we've got these soles that are very similar. They're made by Goodyear, and that's what we're going to go ahead and put on these shoes. And kind of a simple construction. You basically just tear off everything from the bottom. They're Blake stitched, so I'm going to start out by getting in here and at least cutting through the first couple of stitches here at the toe. So my battery kind of died there, but oh, there it is. So first thing I did, because these are a Blake stitch type of shoe here, I've got to cut through a few of the threads here, and that's what I had done already. You can see right there, I get under and just kind of cut right there. And so that allows me to start the pulling back of the sole a little bit like that. And then I grab my pliers here. Let's see. And now I can just start cutting through the stitches. Now typically there's not much glue going on in these shoes. If there is, it's only just a little bit down the center. Majority of what holds these soles on is the stitching actually. Like we talk about a lot of other shoes out there, most of the time you can rely on the glue and the stitching, and they're both just as durable. Where this one, you can see there's glue in there's a fair amount of it, but can't quite rely on the glue in this type of build. I'm not saying this just about Allen Edmonds. I'm saying about any kind of pair of shoes like this, the what is it called, the boat style shoe. It's gonna do that. So some companies actually don't even use a single drop of glue. They strictly just stitch on the sole on some of them. So it's a good plus that Allen Edmonds actually uses a glue on these. I almost forgot I was recording this, but I've got the sole unstitched, so we'll do a little unveiling here. There we go. Usually they put a little chunk here because all the leather kind of like gets wrapped around here, because the way this is designed, here's the leather, it's a solid piece here, but then they have a hole right there on the back, so they put a little chunk of foam in there. We're going to put some cork into it because it gives a little bit of cushioning also and fills in that cavity so you don't feel that as much either. A lot of times though, I do see that it comes unglued in this area, and we glue that down. But before we glue it down, and I'll show you, I've gone ahead and started pulling up the insole. So it's just a 3/4 length insole here, and you can see this cardboard piece here. This actually gets stitched through. That gives it a little bit of structural integrity. It also acts a little bit as the shank, in other words, too. It's not as stiff or as strong as a shank, but it kind of acts like it. It does come unglued as well and everything, but the more you fidget with it, the more you mess with it and try to pull it out. If it's not damaged, which this one isn't, it just looks, you know, kind of beaten up and everything, it's better not to pull these out, just because that stuff will just come apart in pieces. It's cardboard. It's highly pressed cardboard. But you can see the stitches there. We're gonna have to pull all that out there and use some like needle nose pliers to grab hold and just start pulling it out. Sometimes we can pull it from the outside, but just like that there. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that with these ones, do it with the rest of them, and continue on with the process on it. So let me go ahead and pull those stitches and take apart the other ones, and we'll see you back here in just a few. Alright everyone, so I've got everything a little more roughed up. From the factory they just had like the center here roughed up. I got around here just a little bit roughed up, but I gotta be careful because you can see that stitch right there. It kind of holds that area together. I mean, if I glue it, it's still gonna hold it, but I still don't want to mess up the stitches ever. So I just roughed it up enough around all I can without overlapping the holes where the original stitches were and everything right here. And as you can tell, I filled this area in with cork instead of a foam. So usually we don't even stock any kind of foams other than orthopedic, like build up crepe, which is like for thickness to build up on a sole. And yeah, it just, I mean, kind of like this kind of stuff here, which is very, very dense, and the cork's going to be a better filling agent anyways and help absorb some of the shock in the heel. I did also glue up the bases in here too, just because they were coming apart. The green ones completely came out altogether, so got those cleaned up. And then the soles I did rough up a little bit down the center, not the edges obviously, because it's got that little bit of a pattern around the edges that makes it kind of look like a welt or something. But at the center here, they're unfortunately smooth from the factory, and I want to make sure that they're nicely roughed up. The original ones, well, it looks like they must have just roughed up that area here. It doesn't even look like they really roughed up too much. Maybe they did at least a little bit, but yeah, I'd gone through and roughed those guys up. Now it's time to glue up. I'm not using my typical glue that you guys see in the glue pot that I'm always using. I'm actually using this stuff here. It's called Renya. It's got a little bit of a yellowish tint, but once it dries more clear. And oh shoot, I want to make sure that I'm only getting up to where the holes are, not any further. And the reason why I'm again using this one here is because it dries clear, and the soles that we're putting on are white. So if I have just a little bit of an overlap with glue, I gotta wipe my hand off, had some overlapped there, but if I overlap with the yellow glue, it's gonna be very, very noticeable on the yellow, where this one is a lot better as far as drying clear. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and use. This Renya stuff is typically the higher end glue. It's Renya CDC, Cola de Cologne, I guess is what it's called, but I don't use it very often just because not a lot of shoes call for this glue in particular. Some cobblers use this stuff pretty much exclusively, but in reality, from what I've learned from some of our suppliers, vendors, and a few cobblers that are kind of more on the down low about this kind of stuff, apparently this glue isn't quite as strong as the one that I typically use in this container here. Like if you're to take two pieces of material, stick them together, and then pull them apart pound for pound, this glue here, the jet set that I use, tends to bond a lot better. However, that doesn't mean that glue is practical use for a number of applications. Or Renya, you can use it for a number of different types of applications, plus when you use their primers in combination too, makes it a lot better and stuff, where jet set doesn't really have any kind of primers. It's just the contact cement as is, and they've got a few different versions of it. So yeah, typically also the other thing is when you've got a contact cement that's clear or a little more clear than your average contact cement, like this one here, they're not as strong as one that's got that yellow tint to it. The ones with the yellow tint always tend to be stronger. But you guys got to also remember that these shoes mainly are held on with that Blake stitching method, not so much the contact cement. The contact cement, however, that we're using is going to give these shoes a bit more of an upgrade as far as how well these soles are going to stay on. So if people wear out the stitches, they wear through the stitches, these soles aren't coming off very easily. You gotta work at it a little bit. So definitely giving them a nice little upgrade there. And yeah, so at this point I'm just going to go ahead and glue everything up. I'm just gluing down the center here, not the whole entire sole. I usually obviously cover the entire surface area, but again, we're trying to avoid these little ridges here. Got to make sure I get this nicely glued up on the back, center here, the center here, and then we'll start sticking everything together. So we'll see you back in a little bit when it's time to glue it all up. Alright everyone, so I just pulled this guy out of the oven for the red shoes. I actually tried earlier with the sole that we originally thought was going to fit it. turns out it was a little bit off in size, so right now I'm gonna make sure everything's all lined up in case I have to pull it off quickly or anything. Nope, looks like it's all good. Because sometimes before we really press this on or hammer it on or anything, we still have a small opportunity to pull off the sole and make sure we realign it or something. This was in the oven. But if you're wondering also, as far as the glue I used this stuff in this container here. Usually I use this glue here. It's called Jet Set. It's got more of a yellow tint. This one here is Renya. It's kind of more expensive glue. It's got a slight yellowish tint to it there. You can probably see. But it's not nearly as yellow once it dries. Once it dries, it's a lot more clear. Not 100% clear, but a lot more clear than a lot of the glues out there and stuff. So at this point I got to run this to the press really quickly to press it all out, and yeah, we'll continue on. So let me do Alright everyone, so as you saw, I got the front area stitched up around here. You can see some of that green possibly, just because obviously there's green on the inside from the shoe, as you all seen. So some of that green gets a little bit pulled up. Unfortunately, that's unavoidable, especially because this is a white sole and it's white thread, and that kind of stuff happens. Now this back end right here where the heel is, you can see right around there, that area I could not stitch on the machine just because of, you can see how thick it is and everything, and the transition, because that rubber is just so soft that it just doesn't stitch very well underneath that machine. You get enough trouble as is stitching a sole like this in the thinner areas right there. The other shoe was just giving me way more problems even, actually. And so this back end, it's a lot better and safer if I hand stitch it. Now if I hand stitch the entire sole around, that's an option as well, but it takes so much time that I'd probably end up having to honestly charge significantly more. The machine does a phenomenal job though as far as stitching on these soles. So now you can see right here, this is the thread that finished off the stitch that I did with the machine, and this is the new one that I'm pulling through. Now I'm going to pull the new one that I'm about to hand stitch with through. Oh, if I can get it done right. There it is. Okay. I'm going to pull it through that loop, so kind of as if it is a continuation of this stitch, in other words. Just like that. Secures it all nice and everything. And yeah, this is kind of a slow, painstaking process of hand stitching, kind of like we do with welts, obviously, so it's not that fun. So I'm not gonna force you guys to see it all, because oh, come on, you can see right there, there's that needle sticking out right there. Hook that chunk of the thread through and just pull it. And voila, so that's what it looks like right there. Now the stitches are going to look a little bit different, just because this one right here, it's got a chain stitch, so it looks like it's 2 threads, where the back heel is going to have only 1 thread. Unfortunately, that's just how it's going to appear, but durability wise, both of these types of stitches are very, very strong on this shoe. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out stitching these, because I got to get these done very quickly and be able to take some photos and get them conditioned up, and yeah, we'll see you back here in just a little bit. Alright everyone, so got the insole glued in on these, and yeah, we're pretty much done. Like I'd mentioned, you're going to see some of that green right there. Unfortunately, that's unavoidable because it is a white after all, but I'll kind of show you guys what the stitching is like. You can see the stitch pattern right there, how it's like wider, and then it's narrower at the back of the heel, just because they're 2 different stitch techniques, in other words, on those guys. So at this point, we're just going to go ahead and condition them up, and then touch up some odds and ends, kind of like the little frayed up threads. If you have your shoes like this that are moccasin, just kind of clip that off and then take a lighter to it, which a lot of times somebody steals my lighters here all the time, but we use them all over the shop. Just because these are a nylon thread, you're perfectly fine with using a lighter. Don't freak out on it if you ever see that. You can see it melting. Well, there we go. So if you guys enjoyed that video, definitely hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell icon for any interesting news or updates that are going on in the shoe industry. Recently, some of you may have seen that video of JR Leather. This was during the time of the recording. The JR Leather soles are no longer available. By the time this video's up, you know, it's going to be a little while, but you know, definitely check out the videos updating you about what's going on with JR Leather, if we have a replacement by now at the time of the video being posted. So hopefully we have some good news by the time you guys see this. But I'm gonna go ahead and condition them up, take some photos. The red ones actually had to get done a little bit sooner. I've got photos of those as well, and you guys will be able to see them and see what it all looked like. So these are not a fun one, honestly, to do, just because of the stitching on the thick sole. We'll see you next time.